The town bell was going to be rung every night at 8 o'clock. And that's where we get our term curfew. You know, we think of the term curfew. Curfew means that's the time you either need to come in. You know, we had a curfew when we were in high school, but that's when we were supposed to come home. You hear things about things going on. You have a curfew. Everybody's got to be off the streets at a certain time. Well, this curfew, and the word curfew is a French word that means cover your fire. I can't speak French, but it's something like curfew, and it means cover your fire at night. Because they were so fearful of fire that we had to, so, you know, that's the negative connotation that word even comes from, covering your fire at night. Those pictures, those are called curfew bells. And what they were brass or pottery bells, and you break all your coals and embers together, and you put that underneath that bell at night, so the wind wouldn't pick up, blow them around, start a fire, and that was the curfew. You had to cover that fire up every night at 8 o'clock. And there's actually still towns in England to this day that ring bells every night at 8 o'clock. Not that they have the curfew, but that's just tradition. So, you look at that European legacy of fire, anti-fire, you know, fire's bad, and, you know, it was still used, but it was used by outlaws, people that kind of lived outside the laws. They were actually nomadic herders, pastoral people. They still burned, but they were not looked upon as very good folks. And so again, you know, as European man came to this continent, things happened. If you look back, 75% of the Caucasian population in the South were made up of those outlaws. Pastoral herders of Celtic origin, from England, France, and Spain. Fire has been a big part of their culture, and they adapted to Native American culture as soon as they got here and understood it. And that's why you still see more fire in the southeastern part of the U.S. than anywhere else, is because of that historic culture and that people that come with it on that. And as you start to travel through our history, looking at things, you know, fire is pretty important. So this map here was drawn in 1888. I can't remember the guy's name right now, but he traveled throughout, and this is supposed to represent the timbered areas. That's why you got a big gap, you know, through Oklahoma and the west. He was just looking at the timbered regions of the U.S. And those dark oranges, the stuff that are on here and light, that showed what he wrote down was that either more than 10% or at least 10% of that area was burned every year. And that's still even, you look back east, how much fire was going on even in the late 1800s with the large population that was already developing on the East Coast. There was still a lot of fire. There's still a lot being used. And yeah, look at Oklahoma. What's going in there. Then you go back in history, 1910, the year of the big blow up, the big fires. I heard several references this year after the fires in California and stuff out west. I heard some references in 1910, because that was a big fire year, huge. A lot of people died. There were several towns totally consumed in Idaho, Washington, Oregon, different areas. Really dry year, and doing that. So yeah, 1910, you have fires. What's the next thing that happens? Knee-jerk reaction, we enact laws. That's what we did. Think we're going to fix everything, right? So 1911, the Weeks Act was passed, which provided matching funds from the federal government to the states for fire suppression. In 1911, to stop that. Then actually in 1927, there was a ruling of the Clark-McNary Act, which is a forestry act that went through in 1924 that actually withheld money from states that allowed or tolerated prescribed or controlled money. So again, fire's bad. Can't have that. You know, and it was done, you know, through that. 1927, the American Forestry Association, they were one of the big proponents of anti-fire work. I mean, their research journals, they would not allow researchers to publish works that showed or that fire was a benefit to the forest. Or if they did, they had to put a disclaimer in it. But they started what was called the Dixie Crusaders in 1927, and they went in the South, and they traveled for 3 years. You know, this is during the Depression. They had money to spend for anti-fire propaganda. They traveled over 300,000 miles, handed out 2 million pieces of information to all the school kids, because they knew they couldn't get through to the parents. So where do you get through from? And there was actually work done that showed that they had a huge impact on the amount of fire 10 years later. On what went through there. Again, showing people fire's bad. And if you look at it over time, and what fire, how fire is depicted, you know, what we think of fire a lot of times has always been shaped over history and over time. And a lot of it through misinformation. This is an anti-fire poster. You know, death rides the forest when man is careless. What is fire predicted? You know, what is it depicted in this picture? Yeah, you got a guy, skeleton riding a white horse, spreading fire throughout the forest. Bad. And again, what does that predict? What does that even, you know, duplicate? You know, Revelation, you know, showing, oh, it's bad. The destroyer, keep him out of the California forest. You know, what does fire predict? What is it depicted in that picture? You know, the devil. It's evil. You know, help prevent fires. They're all bad. Another one, Mr. Official, Mr. Citizen, Mr. Timberman, help prevent fire. This is 1913. Well, your children have timber to burn if you keep burning it. You know, trying to look at it on a different way. Here's even one from the Oklahoma State Game and Fish Commission. Back in, I think it's sometime in the 40s. Prevent fire, save the grass, and save the soil. Now the Wildlife Department is probably one of the biggest supporters and active burners. They burn well over 100,000 acres every year in this state on their wildlife management areas. You know, things change. Probably my favorite one. This is God's country. Just don't set it on fire and make it look like hell. You know, I mean, all this stuff, that fire is bad. Continual fire is bad. All through that time. And you're doing that. World War II comes around. Continue, we don't stop. Because again, fighting fire takes away from the war effort. Takes money, takes people. So that was a big part of it. You know, see, when Tokyo loves an American forest fire, your carelessness, their secret weapons. You know, again, our forest defense is national defense. You know, again, it brought up widespread. And actually what happened, it actually kind of changed the mode during World War II, because especially in the Southeast, again, a lot of those wood burners that were active wood burners were sent off. They were in Europe and they